Semnol kake mo faceta.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a broadcast. Let me take that from the top. It's been 2 weeks. I was on vacation and I'm rusty. Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online, recorded live on Twitch, Saturdays, 1500 Universal Time. I am Matt Arall, your host from NC Dice Corporation. And behind the screens is McLeod, who's running the show, and he is from The Initiative. So EVE Online is a computer game played around the clock by people all over the world. It is home to one of the most complex player-run economies with politics, governance, trade, economics, and war over a 14-year continuum. This game has epic narratives, and that's why we like to interview people who are part of building those narratives. And it's wartime again. So we brought commanders from 2 of the major alliances that are at war. And there is war in the north, in the south, and the east. But today we're going to focus on the major wars between Pandemic Legion Northern Coalition and the Imperium and people who are associated with that. Also, this week is, starting right now, is the Alliance Tournament. So don't miss that this weekend and next weekend. And thanks for showing up and watching this show live. And if you're listening to it on podcast, thanks for that too. If you would like to support this show, we'd really appreciate it with follows, subscribes, bits, tips during the show as you watch it live. If you only listen to it as a podcast, you can contribute through Patreon/Matt Terrell, Matterall. On behalf of everybody associated with this show, thank you for your continued support. All right. Let's get started with some introductions, and we'll just take it from the top in order and start with Carneros.
Good morning. I'm Carneros, CEO of The Bastion.
Killer B.
Hey, I'm Killer B. I'm FC in Pandemic Legion.
Pro God.
I am a Pro God Legend. I'm a FC in Test Alliance.
Well, let me stop right there. I think it's kind of rude that you guys have to introduce yourselves, but I only do it for the podcast so that people can associate your voice. But you guys are pretty famous, so maybe I should just introduce you guys. But you know, we'll maybe do that next time. This time that'll have to do. Seamus.
Hello, I am Seamus Dunhu of EVE University. I am a member of the education department.
I'm Matt just disconnected and he's back.
All the buttons. And Tiberius.
Hey, Tiberius Stargazer, retired writer, still keep my toe in with EVNT, lover of all the tournaments, and trying to get over this hangover that I've got by trying to mix beer and coffee in a flat white porter, and I think it's a misguided attempt. But we'll see.
I like the way you said that. It sounded like lover of all things. It's like lover of ladies all over the world.
I don't know what he's trying to say.
Hang in there. Now you're nursing a hangover. All right. Let's start with the show. The Imperium strikes back. That's the way it's been branded by the Imperium itself. And this looks like they're trying to position this as a revenge expedition up north to the people, delivering revenge to the people that ousted them from their home up in the north a year and a half ago. So let's actually get some background on this. It started out with the State of the Union. Do you guys want to talk about how that went over?
Oh, it was glorious. It was so good.
It's kind of...
No, the State of the Union was fuck that shit. That was so
That's why it was good.
I enjoyed it. Well, I enjoyed the video. That's fun stuff.
Video was really frustrating.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
so I don't know, man. I guess it's his thing, but just I feel so weird reading his speech. Like, why wouldn't you just say what's up, right? Like, why do you need to prepare a speech? But like I said, this was what he does, so whatever. I don't really care.
All right.
The video was kind of weird because I think it was pretty inaccurate all over, but whatever.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that's always the case with what this stuff.
Let's back it up. Let's back it up before we get into how we felt about it. Let's actually talk about what it is. So there was a State of the Union, which is obviously a play on State of the Union, and the Union being Goon Swarm is the center of the Imperium. So it's State of the Union, and so that's when the leader of the Goons and Imperium, Mittani, comes out and gives a big speech and takes questions and mobilizes troops, and that's what happened. A week ago or so. And
it's part of the like local cultural traditions of this online game community. They like to do this stuff, just like they like to call the first super cap killed a sacrifice, or just like they like to have a little narrative, and they like to have a little speech and a moment where it kicks off. And it's not for the outside audience, and it doesn't need to be particularly accurate to military plans or the narrative. It just needs to be a fun, cultural, emotional moment.
Well, it's clearly not for the outside audience, because it fucked completely with the outside audience.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is in that way. He's trying to provoke.
Yeah, maybe his intention was to, what did he say, Killa? To insert himself between two conflicts and then immediately ruin one of those conflicts by claiming to be allied with him.
All right, well, hold on. So there's the State of the Union, and Mittani makes a speech. They play this video, and the video is kind of a satire of the lighting of the what are this called? Gondor?
It's the
Gondor.
beacons.
Gondor.
Oh yeah, the Beacons of Gondor. Yeah.
Yeah, Beacons of Gondor, which was kind of funny. It ends with this cracks me up. A Russian, was it the Russian? What do they call it? National anthem?
Which is the best national anthem, and that's really hard for me to say as an American. But
well, and so this is, it's just kind of like a lot of theater and pomp and stuff like that. But my favorite line was, "We're going to go up there and deliver vengeance, and they're assholes." It's just like...
But that for me was like the best thing of the whole thing. It was very deliberately meant to be like, oh yeah, we're going to go do this and it's going to be amazing. It was kind of non-committal in a lot of the words, and sometimes it did contradict himself a little bit. But at the same time, it was very like, we're going to go do this and screw everyone else. And yeah, you can be angry at us now. And that's literally the entire idea of it.
I mean, if role-playing's your thing, then that's your thing. I'm not going to fault anyone for it. But I don't know. I've always felt that Eve's like a competitive game, just like, the rec league I play on every Sunday is a competitive game. There are ways to get motivated for competitive sports that don't involve like massive narrative, role playing type stuff. I don't know.
I think that's true. About it. This kind of puts it in the pro wrestling arena, right? Where they go up there and they have their big interview and shout and pound their fists.
Yeah.
Before a big battle, and they're kind of hyping up the audience. But again, this is also an internal message for people to say, this is why we fight. And that is, I think, something that is important too. But here's the problem. You have this big speech and it feels powerful. You tell your guys you're the most powerful thing this game has ever seen. And at the same time, a bunch of Rorquals are getting killed in your home area as you guys are moving out.
Although that's all one guy. That's one guy screwing up with all those Rorquals and the two super carriers.
How many Rorquals did he lose?
He lost
17.
20. I thought it was 20.
17 Rorquals and 2 super, or 20 and 2 supers.
Yeah,
there wasn't. Also, I want to point out, wasn't while they were leaving. It was unironically while Mittani was starting up his speech.
Literally
one jump over.
Fucking hilarious.
And in the next, it was one jump over to 2,000 people sitting docked up and listening to that guy. We'll just drop dreads on 2 supers and 15.
Well, let's be real. Let's be real. If you were planning a PL move fleet and you were talking to PL move fleet, and then you hear oh, by the way, some dude just got his Rorquals tackled, wouldn't you just tell everyone fuck him?
Yeah, I would. It's still pretty funny if you think about it.
Oh, it's hilarious. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And we all laughed. Except for the CEO of Brothers in Arms, who was pissed and swearing. But hi Zolfi. But the thing is, when you got a lot of people, it's hard to move them all it's hard to get them all to coordinate and do something together at the same time. And if you're not telling them where they're going or what they're doing, that makes it even harder. So having some kind of like wind them up speech at the beginning does kind of help get them all focused and paying attention to you to some degree, to listen and get them coordinated into fleets to then go do something, even though they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it also marks time. This is the beginning of something. And whether, instead of like, oh, we're just kind of playing around and invading a few here and there. Oh, look, we're in a war. That's not as good. I like this idea of like campaign. It's kind of old Eve. Here's a campaign. We're going to do it. We're coming at you, and this is happening. And I really like that.
Because we didn't know where we're going. We got all the way to Hakone, and then we're like, okay, when's the next jump? We didn't know that's where we were going to stop. No one told anyone.
Yeah. So before we get to Hakone, also at the same time is NC is like, oh, let's backpedal because we went into Placid, which is halfway down to where goons are. So let's move our big hardware, our Titans and Supers back to base because they're coming up here, so we can fight them up here. But in doing so, one of the FCs tried to cheat a jump that looked very close. It's between Vey and Fiery, but it cost him a few Titans and some Supers. Right, Tiberius?
Yeah.
The rumor I
I'm not sure what
heard,
to say on that one, but I mean, essentially, whoever was taking that last straggling group of Supers and Titans through decided to take exactly the same. Yeah, it was taking exactly the same route that everybody else took the day before, when everybody else had been watching that route and was expecting things to go on that route. So he decided to take a small contingent of Super Carriers and Super Titans through the same route with no support. I mean, what could go wrong?
The rumor I heard from the other side was that he was told not to do that and still did it.
Yes. He took the thing that fucked him up wasn't that the fact that he took the route. The route is 100% safe because it was all citadels. The issue is that guy that was in charge of that move up, basically he wanted to sign to the next fortizar, and a snuff guy warps in and kills the Sino. So he decides, well, let's just take the gate, and that's what got him killed.
Well, right? And it was more
the mistake.
Yeah, you're right. And it was more than that because there was a bounce on the gate when all these Titans tried to pass through it. One bounced out, and that caused a delay. Otherwise, you're zooming to gate, jumping through, and then you jump out.
Your bounce likelihood goes way up if Snuff is sitting there waiting to tackle you.
Well, anyway, Servanda's a good FC. Really like him. He's actually one of the guys that fought the first. He FC'd the first fight against. I guess during World War B or the Casino War up in the north for NC Dot. So it's not like he's an unseasoned guy. This guy's really good. Just things happen. And yeah, there was some, that shouldn't have happened, but it did. And sometimes there's a little bit of hubris on the side of NC feeling that insulated with that many Titans and stuff. You feel like, well, who's going to attack us? But it can happen. And it did. So there was kind of casualties on both sides as this war gets kicked off. Then, people don't know where, I guess, at least that's the way it was portrayed by Mittani, that people don't know where we're going to land. So, and Carnosi just confirmed that. They land in Hakone, and to try to get a foothold into this new theater, that didn't work out so well. Let's go into that, because that's really what we're talking about this week, is the two fights that happened in Hakone that were huge.
Well, upon arriving, everyone who lived in Vale and Tribute back before the big war, we're all tickled pink. Oh, how cool, we get to come back here. It's nostalgic. You feel like you're driving through your old neighborhood shooting stuff, which is a fun feeling in Eve.
Well, Hakone...
A reminder of what you used to own before World War B.
Except that the Delve stuff is better, and everyone in the group, everyone in the Bastion likes the new home better than the old home, so there's no regret. It's just fun.
That's perfect. This is a 100% win-win situation because we like you there better too. So I think we're set. Just all good.
All right, so we traveled back into the old stomping ground of the Imperium. And it wasn't really the old stomping ground of the Imperium. It was adjacent, right? Because that's low security space, and that's not really controlled by any sovereign
hood adjacent.
Holder. Yeah, the hood adjacent, right? And but it is where, it is the center point for the campaign against low-sec entities. Do you remember what that was called? There was a campaign by Imperium, drawing a blank, because it didn't really go very well, where the Imperium was sitting kind of quiet and they thought we need to do something. So they jumped into low-sec.
Viceroys.
The Viceroy program to take over
yeah.
the moons of that area. And that was in Hakone. I believe that is where a lot of the hardware landed. So it's not unfamiliar territory for the Imperium. They may have even had assets that were still there.
Yeah, the Harkonnen was also a big focal point towards the end of 2015 as well, when that war was all kicking off and got nicknamed the Harkonnen Meat Grinder. So I'm quite glad to see the Harkonnen Meat Grinder make a comeback, because I have lots of fond memories of that time as well.
Right. There was a lot of big battles there that were happening before the actual invasion 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. So this is one of these places that has seen a lot of action. And if you look on it geographically, you can see the map there. It's pretty much the last stop before you jump into two separate regions. So you can attack to the left, or you can attack to the right, which is a good strategic point.
Dude, who's that Red Alert 7 guy?
I
Sorry, go on, Matt.
don't know.
Twitch chat.
I don't know. If you're getting harassed in chat, just ignore it, because again, some people who listen to this aren't even seeing chat. So what happened the first? Let's go and talk about the battles. We have two of the commanders here that were involved. Let's talk about the two battles. And the first one, both of them over fortizar, which was basically going to be Imperium's foothold into the area where they could stage and have a market and supply and that sort of thing. And both times they were turned back. The first fight was basically the Imperium versus NCPL and Horde. The second fight they called in Test as reinforcements, and with the same result, unfortunately, for Test and Bees. So let's go to the first fight. We're going the Hakone fights. Let's talk about the first one real quick.
Called in.
I don't know if you got called in or you arrived, but we'll get to the second one in just a minute. Let's talk about the first one. What happened there?
It was pretty straightforward. We scouted the fortizar. We decided to form up for it. And it was, we basically formed up everybody in the north. So that was, I don't want to forget anyone here, because I know people actually, they want to get mentioned.
Yeah.
No, so it was NC.
Go ahead and say it. People listen to the show.
GOTG, MC, and I think that's it. That's for the first one, right? For the second one, we also had Shadow Cartel on board, because they're just nice people. But
didn't know about that when I dropped my feet.
But yeah, so that was the first one. We just formed up a huge amount of battleship fleets and just warped in on the fortizar at range, a little bit of range, whatever, like 50, and started shooting it. And then Goons had carriers pre-staged on an Astra house that was funny was because the Astra house was like 4,000 kilometers away from the fortizar, so the fighters took like forever to boat over there. And we just basically responded with supers and defanged the carriers, which then resulted in them obviously being completely useless, because if your carriers are 4,000 kilometers away, you send new fighters over in 10% tie-dye, that takes about 10 hours. And, we just jumped in, defanged their carriers with our supers and our own carriers. Horde dropped some like 30 carriers. And then we just started slaughtering subcaps with our supers. Then again, low-sec being low-sec, obviously you can always just warp out when you want to. But we still killed a pretty good amount of stuff in that first engagement there. But the second one was definitely way bloodier. But yeah, then we just killed the fortizar, and that was the first timer.
Yeah, and that's defanging, for those who are a little bit confused, is carriers launch these drones or fighters, and so defanging would be attacking the drones and fighters, leaving the carrier without really much offensive capability. And in these kind of long fights, I imagine you want to reduce the incoming damage by taking out their ability to produce damage. So that's called the defanging of carriers.
Yeah, I mean, they had 100 and something carriers on that Astra house. That's a lot of DPS. They would have, if those carriers would have applied DPS to our battleships, they would have just killed our battleships really fast. So obviously we can't let it happen, and we just needed to make these carriers, do no damage, and that's why we killed their fighters with our own fighters that are for that purpose. And then once those fighters were dead, our super carriers then could start focusing on their subcaps instead. which
For
is a
context.
big advantage.
For
Say what?
context, how many super carriers did you have at the time that we had 110
I think the
carriers?
first timer we had 120 or something, 120
So more
some
super carriers than
Then
carriers
you
in
had
the
carriers,
opposing
yeah.
forces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we also had like 50 carriers or something from Horde. So we had like, I don't know, 70 carriers more than you guys or some shit. And then obviously it was supers and not just carriers.
Yeah, and it looks lopsided this way because you're fighting on your home turf. And so this is where your heavy assets are. So they can actually be used. Whereas before on deployment, you don't have those because you leave those at home. You use dreadnoughts in order to do huge amounts of damage. But on your home turf, you can bring in these super carriers that are really the end game ship for a lot of players. Let's actually talk about the second one. I maybe misunderstood what was going on there, but I thought that Test was going to join Goons in that fight against.
Well, we ended up joining Goons in that fight because Doom Chinchilla sent out a mean tweet in text. And at that point, we had to side with Goons for that fight. But for that particular fight, yeah.
Oh, but that's a one-time thing, and you could go either way. You're the honorable third party in this.
I mean, the tweets could go either way. So, yeah, we could still go either way from this point forward.
Twitter matters.
Knowing Doom, though, I don't think it will change anytime soon.
No, I doubt it will.
We can talk about that guy in a minute. But what was happening in that fight, and then we'll talk about some of the motivations.
From what I could tell, Goon's plan was to kill it. Did they warp their carriers into the anchoring fort and then warp them out after dropping fighters?
Yeah, exactly. So they learned from the first fight that boating them over from like 1,000 kilometers away is going to take way too long. So this time they decided to warp the carriers down, drop fighters, warp them back up to the Astra House because
which you can only do in Lowsec. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only a viable tactic in Lowsec. It's a nice idea though. I saw it and I was like, I guess that works. And then they just warp their Typhoons to you on 0. I fucked up my warp in with my Nightmares and had it too close to the Titans and got GTFO'd out into a fucking safe spot in 10% tie-dye, and it took me a half hour to get back on the field. So that was...
You're going to have to explain that to the audience.
Yeah, so there's the GTFO is a new Doomsday that it's an area of effect, so you aim it just like you would a remote burst from a super carrier. But if you whatever subcaps are inside the sphere of the GTFO get teleported to a safe spot about 11 AU away, and then they're stuck there for 60 seconds. They're warp disrupted for 60 seconds.
It's a little disconcerting. I had 2 Typhoons next to each other in that battle, and one of them got bounced out like that, and the other one didn't. And I was a little bit surprised that it would affect just one and not the other because it happened to be on the edge of the effect.
The sphere is pretty small. I'm not exactly sure how big it is, but I think it's like 10 km or 15 km.
It's 10 kilometer.
Right? Yeah, 10. So it's a pretty small sphere. If you look at like a big fleet, like a big battleship fleet, if they're all just sitting on their anchor, they can easily be spread out over, a little more than 10, especially if they like anchor.
And another contextual difference in the second fortizar fight over the first is that we had more little Astrohuses on grid. So instead of the carriers being 4,000 kilometers away, they were only 1,000 kilometers away this time after they had dropped off their fighters and bounced back out to a spot, a perch.
Now the reason that the carriers drop off their payload and then retreat to a Astra House and it being closer, being more helpful, is because they can tether up. They can say, yeah, stop fighting my fighters, which allows them to then tether up and be safe. So they kind of have a base that they can touch and they're no longer, up for grabs. They're immune to damage. Mm-hmm. So that's the tactic of preserving the carrier while the fighters are still out there fighting. But yeah, and one of the things before we go on and talk about the progression of this last battle was that as the carriers were dropping off their drones, I think it was a Horde Atron baited out a Thanatos, and the Thanatos went for him, causing him to lose connection to his safety line to the Fortizar, and he immediately got alpha'd off the field by the waiting NCPL group, which was kind of funny.
It happened to a couple of carriers that just foolishly aggressed, so that was still aggressed from, because obviously they were doing space superiority as well and then shooting our subcaps. And if you're still aggressed and you warp down, you're still gonna get untethered. So some of those were untethered and some carriers died, but it wasn't a lot. We killed maybe like 4 or 5 carriers in the whole process of them warping up and down over and over again. But that didn't really matter anyways, because we just ignored them in the end.
Yeah, it didn't
After
turn
the
the tide.
review thing.
But I like pointing those things out because it shows people when your FC says don't aggress, you're not going to sneak attack something where nobody will notice. People will notice because when you sneak attack, you make yourself vulnerable. So when they say don't attack, they're keeping you invulnerable. You should listen to directions.
You should generally always listen to the FC.
Amen.
Yeah.
The other thing for FCs is notice that the GTFO, which is get the fuck out, Doomsday, which is of course a vernacular name for the Doomsday, has a certain range. So you'll also notice that the orbits around an anchor, the FC, have grown from 2,000, 3,000 to like 20,000. So this is a defensive move to not get
It's also a
everybody.
counter boost tactic.
If you want, yeah, I think the meta in general has been a lot of people like to say, you've seen this a lot over the years, people are like, put formations in the game, put formations in the game. Eve has formations, and it's always had formations. Anchoring is technically a formation. I think the meta for fleet formations is moving to be more spread out as people are learning how to do it more effectively, because it's always really difficult as an FC to communicate things like that to your fleet. Like, let's say you want to spread your fleet out, but you all want to be at 60 kilometers to the target. Well, how would you do that exactly? How do you explain that to your fleet? You can't just say orbit on you, because then some are going to be 80 away and some are going to be 40 away. So then you have to figure out how to do that. I think as people are learning how to kind of communicate to their fleets proper positioning and spreading out more, they're getting better at it. But command destroyers definitely motivated people to stop anchoring as much as they used to. Bosuns are definitely motivating people to stop anchoring as much as they used to. In general, it's easier to escape if your fleet is more spread out, because it's hard for a single bubble to trap your entire fleet. There's always been benefits to spreading out. It's just the bosuns and the command decies kind of, gave people that last little push they needed.
That's a really good point. It is starting to spread out. Okay, so you get teleported. Your fleet comes into fight, and they get teleported in tie-dye, which takes forever for you to swim back to the fight. And what happened?
We were fighting from a distance, but in tie-dye, especially with the current module lag mechanics, once 10% tie-dye is really not that big of a deal. It's when you get 10% tie-dye and then your module stops cycling, which is generally known as module lag. Once you get module lag, then the game starts behaving in weird ways, and things that would normally work in a real fight or in a normal non-laggy fight don't work anymore, and tactics change and all that. So logistics reps, and I actually, I talked to Larrikin the other day, and he confirmed this for me. Logistics reps actually work better under module lag than guns do. So if you can't volley what you're shooting at, you're really not going to be able to kill it. And especially with faxes on the field. So we were at range, but we couldn't volley the Macarials because we didn't have enough nightmares to do it with long range ammo. We killed, I want to say like 10 or 15 at range once we came back from the GTFO. And then they were catching reps on every other one, though. So I decided to stop fighting from a distance, and we warped in at 0. And then all of the Macario fleets plus all of the super carriers focused on us. And we warped away really quickly after that.
Well, you skipped the part, though. You got thrown out a couple times, and you pleaded with Killer B, like, can you guys please not do that?
Oh, yeah. No, I asked Killer B if he could stop GTFOing us. I think he did. Killer, I noticed I stopped getting GTFO'd after that.
Yeah, I'm actually sure why we did. I think either all of them were on cooldown, and I know that we we at least tried to GTFO one of the Foon fleets once, so probably all of the GTFOs were in cooldown or some shit. I don't know.
Well, much appreciated.
Yeah, no worries. I got you.
Well, I love that. Like, it's a honor among gentlemen. Like, would you mind not letting us, keeping us out of the fight?
Well, let's be real. The fight was the outcome was never in doubt, so it was just fun.
But let us in there, and he complied. Although last night, Doom said that he heard that you had asked them to stop, so he did it twice more or something like that.
Yeah, well,
It sounds like Doom, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do all
And I
over.
got to thinking about that. I don't know the guy, and he's probably a great guy or whatever, but
He is.
I got to thinking that, I'll take your word for it, that's not cool. It's not that you threw Pro God out of the fight, but that you're having so much fun doing that, and that alone causes a ton of lag. Like it compounds the problem. So I
Well,
was
it's part of the game. Like if you don't want to, like I was asking Killavi to stop just kind of as a joke, and maybe it would work. But if he kept on doing it, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Like the fact that
No.
Doom did it isn't a big deal.
Yeah, you're right, and that is part of the game. But it just kind of, I think, it puts things in perspective that a few people control the fun of a lot of people, and by compounding lag, you're making people have to spend, instead of 2 hours, 4 hours, before they can go home and do their thing. And in the end, isn't that damage the game, because people are like, I'm not getting in that fight. That's a tie-dye
I
fight.
don't think the GTFOs were affecting any lag. I'm gonna be honest. In
Well, I
fact,
think it
if
does.
anything, they were
Technically, it
reducing
does.
lag. No,
Everything
raising
does.
lag
It's
is
just
Crime Watch.
Yeah.
Well, because of Crime Watch, I think it does, because it makes everything have to analyze.
I get what you're trying to do, but I don't think using the GTFOs was very detrimental to the lag situation.
Fair enough. You were the victim of it. I'm not defending you. I'm defending the overall concept of, hey, a couple guys are having a great time. Everybody else is sitting around waiting.
I think the fighters from the carriers and super carriers contributed more to the lag than the GTFO.
Well, and LowSec did too, because it does an immense amount of calculating all the time that NullSec
To
doesn't
be
do.
100% honest, none of us are sitting there looking at the server log, so we really have no fucking idea what contributed to the lag and what didn't. But
I think we should just remove LowSec and get rid of a problem. That would make lots of things a lot easier.
that would.
Or ban.
So I saw one good idea. They could have a system in place where, like, once local goes above 1,000, there's just a message that goes out to everyone in that system, like, "Hey, Crime Watch just doesn't work in this system right now. Get over it."
That makes sense. You
I
don't
like
need
it.
Crime Watch in that system. All right, so let's go on though to fighting in general. What's this conflict going to look like? I will say there's one thing. There is another big fight going to happen in a few hours, where NC is going to defend one of their. Yeah, I don't think this is OPSEC because I heard it publicly. So there is a big fight going to happen in about 4 hours, I believe.
No,
And
we don't have a form up for it.
yeah, well, you do now. No, just kidding. So there is still like more action to be had, and I think this is, the next big fight is going to be one of many big fights that are coming. Is this kind of the fight we've been looking for? Because it's kind of been a quiet summer.
It's pretty boring, man. Honestly, like
I don't think it is.
It's good, but it's not the. It's not. It's better than nothing, but it's not like the big thing. It's not gonna be something like what was in 2016, this huge event that made it into basically every media. Reddit was on fire for I don't know how many weeks, and I don't think this will be like that. But it is still a lot better than sitting around watching the AT and doing basically nothing. For so far, this deployment from Goons up north has been amazing fun for me. Like I've been seeing much more than I have in the past month. I've been running fleets for like I don't know a couple of hours every single day. Most of the day, actually, unless I have to work, I'm basically just FCing all day long. I'm just doing claw fleets. I'm doing, I'm bosoning hurricane fleets off the field. I'm whatever. I'm just playing the game basically, and it's great. I love it. And I thank the Goons for bringing this opportunity of content up to the north, and not making me have to jump clone into my Delph Dread all the time to kill one of their supers or something like that.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a deploy. So like, when it's just regular capitals versus super fleet, it's not going to be a real war, and it never was. I think you're not going to see another World War B until two of the major blocks in this game move their super fleets within range of each other. I mean, that's the only way you're going to see a real war, because of the way the capital mechanics are. If you've got a super fleet in range and the enemy doesn't, then there's really not much you could do. I mean, Killer, look at what you guys did in Catch. Like, yeah, you guys are doing great there, but even there, without your supers, we were able to beat your caps on multiple occasions. So, like, it's just the way it is these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically, especially, I mean, this is a problem for groups like Goons, for groups like NC Dot, and for groups like PL. We can, like, if we would have deployed to catch, or if we were to deploy anywhere with our entire super fleet, there is not a high chance we would get a lot of fights, because people would just, assume, oh, we can't field any battleships, we can't field any caps, we're just going to get dropped on by supers and titans, because of this boogeyman in everyone's head. So obviously we have to choose sometimes, or that's what we did into catch for the first time in a long time. We decided to, let's just leave our supers home. We know that there will be opportunities for us to get shit on eventually, which happened. And that's just the way it is. But on the other hand, we did get a lot of really awesome fights out of it too that we've never would have gotten otherwise. Like all the fights we've had versus Providence, which almost all of them have been really amazing in terms of just battleship brawls and stuff like that. None of these would have happened if we would have brought our supers with us.
Honestly,
So,
it shows some growth in PL, because PL never used to think like that in the past. Like let's tie one hand behind our back so that we can make sure we get some better content.
And that choice
we've been changing.
That choice might have also influenced this conflict too, because that might have come into our consideration when the Imperium decided to come up north without supercaps.
I don't know about that.
I wasn't in the original conversations where they talked about the initial forming of the shape of this.
I don't think
no, I mean,
that. I don't think that had anything.
You have to understand, if the Imperium were to deploy their supers as well, then Delph would be on fire within a couple of days. Right now, basically, for you, your supers are exactly what our supers were for us in the north. We have the rental empire in the north, right, that we make our money with. And we were having our super cap fleets from NC and PL strategically deployed in range of that. Like sometimes we were a little further out, but we were still like sort of in range. Just as like I guess it's kind of like the atomic bombs, right? Everybody just has them to scare people off. That way, we've been having this rental space for since January now, and nobody has ever enthused anything of it. Even though when Fortizar came out and people were like, "Oh, renting is dead. No, it isn't. We've owned these entire regions up north, and made money off them, and no one's ever touched them. Just maybe because of us supers, or maybe just because people are hating Fortizar. I think it's more the latter, but
I like Fozzy stuff.
We'll see. But yeah, so I think it's the same for Goons. If you were to move them up north, then people would do stuff in Delph, and you wouldn't really be able to respond to that properly.
Well, we would have probably picked a different staging system as our destination for the deployment. If we were
the only option for you would have been Fountain, and that's it. Because everything else, we've seen what happened in Catch, right? You could have tried Fountain, I guess, but I guess because of that one regional gate, we see how that would have worked. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't think there was any consideration at all that you would bring your supers up here, which is a logical choice. Like, I'm not criticizing it. I think it's a smart move to leave them down south, because otherwise you would have just lost all that space again. But whatever.
The only thing about, like, y'all brought an absolutely astronomical amount of regular capitals up here. I mean, I think it was like 1,000 on that EU move up, and then another 300, 400 the 5 or 6 hours later on the US op, if I remember correctly. And but the numbers y'all got in Hakone were much lower. I mean, yeah, I know it's a state of the Union, you're gonna get more than that, but to only have 130 carriers and 70 dreads in fleet, like, what is that? Because it's USTZ and not EUTZ? Are y'all more EU focused?
We are more EU focused at the moment, but also scouts who are watching a move up can't really tell at that scale of numbers what's a suitcase carrier from an actual combat cap. So you have to kind of filter those out too.
Well, what's the point of a carrier if it can't, I guess, moving your ship?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, it's true. I actually do agree with Carneros. I think a lot of those carriers and dreads we saw moving, or at least part of them, were suitcases where the pilots might not be ready yet to use them in the combat just now. They're training into it or something, but it's obviously still way easier to move with them. I think that's a thing. But yeah, I mean, I was really underwhelmed with the jet numbers too, to be honest. Like I was expecting at least, like I was thinking, oh, with nothing. I mean, that was all USTZ. We're still waiting for a first big EUTZ brawl, sort of. But in that first big EUTZ brawl, I'm really curious to see what they can get between, you know, how many jets they can get themselves, and then also Snuff and Project Mayhem are a factor who are always keen to, you know, fuck our supers. So yeah, but I'm not scared.
So it's not a complete walking over the invading forces. There's a lot of variables in there that can screw up a day or two.
Oh, of course. I mean, there's always, right? Like one little fuck up by some guy that thinks, oh, look, I'm in PL, I have a Titan, I'm gonna meme on these jackdaws in MTECO or something, right? And then suddenly he gets bubbled, and a couple jets drop onto him, and he asks for help, and we realize, oh, you're an MTECO, we can't jump our supers and Titans to you, we have to warp to you, and then we get drag bubbled. Basically, what happened to Goons in DTEC W when we jet bombed J Amazingness Revenant, that's basically what could happen to us in MTECO, because we're just in the exact same situation. So it's a lot of telling your people to be careful.
Got it.
And we're not underestimating them.
You brought it up, so I'm going to bring it up that you used your Titan to sit outside of a gate, and you totally wiped out a whole Hurricane fleet, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't in MTECO.
No, that was the same theater, though.
Well, this is what happens when you fucking afterburner armor tank a Hurricane. But
yeah, first of all, their fitting is questionable.
I like the drama of that. You sitting off a gate with a Titan, this fleet comes in, and you wipe the entire fleet out. That's like oldie for the Doomsday was area of effect.
Oh, well, boasting for you in a nutshell. It's whatever. Like honestly, at the end of the day, also what you have to understand is that I personally have a lot more access to intelligence than the average line member that is probably going to die to one of those dread bombs. When goons form, you know, there's a very high chance of me knowing. I'm probably going to know what they're forming, who's forming them, and all that. Whereas the average line member doesn't have access to that information, and that's why I can afford to make plays like that with you know, bosoning their fleets or whatever. But even in that situation, I'm still very, very careful, because now that they know I do it, especially now after I did it, I'm going to have to expect that everything that comes after this might be some sort of bait. So it's just, I'm really happy that first time worked out so well. Because now I can just be a lot more careful and pick my targets a lot more careful.
Yeah, you got that 3-pointer in. Now you're gonna do layups. That's good. I like that. That was when I heard that, I couldn't stop laughing. I thought that was pretty cool. There's a couple other things I wanted to cover, and then we can move on to other topics. But one is that Boat kept trying to make this case that Horde doesn't have FCs. What's that about?
So the reason he's saying that is because during the last major fights we've had, the first one in the first right at the start of the deployment of the goons, and now for the Hakone fights, it wasn't a Horde FC seeing the Horde fleets. It was for the first fight, it was me, and then it was Capri-san from PL and Hard Knocks who's been FCing them for the last two Conan fights. So now Boat is on the whole like, Horde, you know, doesn't have anything to FC themselves or whatever. But I guess the way you need to look at it is take any junior FC in Goons and let them FC in Hakone fight, right?
Yeah.
The door just ring. Fuck.
It's okay. I'll take over. If Boat is trying to make the case that Horde doesn't have any experienced players and have their own FCs, they have Horde Vanguard, which is a whole bunch of experienced players. And those are the guys that were running around as the big fights were happening, running around and destroying the Astra houses that were being planted outside. And of the 11 that were dropped, I believe 10 were destroyed. That's very effective. It was them and also MC Mercenary Coalition that did that kind of work outside the actual battle. That was important work. So it's not like Horde doesn't have experienced people, but I guess there's some case to be made about their leadership and how they're basically, I think he's trying to say they're basically slaves to PL, something like that, right?
Well, in these really big big fights, in these really big battles, you don't necessarily want to divide up by corporation or alliance or something like that. You want to divide up by function and ship type and manage your chessboard pieces strategically and tactically. So, like, for example, the Bastion doesn't put out separate fleets in these fights, separate from Goonswarm, and use our own FCs. We merge in and we'll be part of the Typhoon fleet, part of the carrier fleet, blah, blah, blah. And in the FC pool running the fleet, our FCs will be mixed in with the Goonswarm FCs, and as each one gets headshot, thank you very much, the next one steps up. And it's seamless, and the line members don't even know if the guy calling is Goonswarm or Bastion or TNT or what.
Yeah.
I'm back.
As Pfizer or Perzer talks here in chat, it is about culture, and I think that's the case that Boat's trying to do. He's trying to drive a wedge to say, hey, Horde, you guys are basically pets to PL. You're going to do what they say. In fact, you don't even have your own FCs. I think that's the case he's trying to make.
But that's just false because, I mean, first of all, we're part of a family, right? And then second of all, they have their own FCs. There might just not be many FCs in Horde. There's some, but there might not be many FCs in Horde that are at that level yet where they can FC fights like Hakone, for example, where it's really important that there's no mistakes being made. That's the only difference. I was going to say, like, there's just like, you won't have some Goon Junior FC a fight like Hakone. It will always be Asher or Jay or, some other higher ranking. I know Goons have rankings in their FCs, higher ranking FC. And we just talk to Horde, right? And Horde's actually thrilled to be FC'd by, for example, me or Capri, because they know us from somewhere else, or because they know Capri's block or whatever, and they enjoy flying under us and having, experiencing something else from the usual. So that's why we did it. Again, if Boat thinks that's bad, or that's just because they're second class slaves or whatever, then whatever, like, that's fine. But it's different.
Well,
we just don't operate like goons. We just are part of one family. We just run it in different alliances.
Yeah, and I didn't want to give it too much attention. I just wanted to see what that was about. I know it's a narrative that's being pushed because it drives wedges. Narratives can also drive wedges with your enemies, which is something that you can see people do in the metasphere all the time. They start talking about a topic that's kind of sensitive in order to kind of build division inside your enemy. So it's psychological warfare. I wanted to talk about one more thing, and that was Initiative is recovering its moons in their old territory while these fights are going on. Is that a victory for the Imperium?
If they want to sell it as one, of course. I mean, that's what, that's one thing about EVE, which makes wars in EVE generally very hard, because everybody writes their own narrative, right? Like, so for example, right now, Matani is surfing a lot about, us losing, or NC losing, I don't know, 30, 35, whatever money moons in Syndicate. And sure, that's a loss, right? And on paper, they lost those moons. That was money that used to go to NC.'s wallet. Now it's going back to Initiative's wallet. The other question is if we care about it or not. And it doesn't really matter what I say, because, again, the narrative, like, there's just going to be people, Killer's just, Killer Bee's just spinning it right now. They actually do care a lot.
Well, and you can...
It's
ProGod? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Seamus, and then ProGod. Let's go with Seamus and then ProGod.
Yeah, the only objective view you can have on conflicts between these big groups in EVE Online are the API verified kill mails. That's the only objective view you're going to ever have on this. I'm done.
I don't know about that. It's generally whatever you can get your alliance to go along with. I mean, back when I ran Nully, and you remember this, Matterall, like, Nully one time got kicked out of our space entirely, and we didn't even lose a corp over it. And, we were right back into a different war 3 weeks later in the north, with pretty much everyone we had. It's how you frame stuff. Like Killa said, like, Matani's selling that as a win, and if his members are buying it and they're excited, then that's great. That's a win for them. And if NC Dot is selling to their members that it doesn't matter, and their members are believing that, and I honestly don't think it matters for them that much, then that's a win for them too. Like like Killa said, it's very complicated because there are no clear rules in this game. It's not like a Overwatch match where the winner is very obvious. It's a persistent game. There are no clear rules on who wins or who loses. It's kind of whatever happens.
Right. And you win in different ways and you lose in different ways. You can have a fight where you kill more people than your enemy, but your ships were more expensive, and that happens all the time. So who won that fight? And then there's fights that are just for fun, it seems, and some that are for objectives, and you lose a lot of ships, but you got your objectives. So who won that fight? I don't know. It depends on what your narrative is. And there is a lot of psychological warfare that revolves around these wars. That's what the propaganda war is about. That's what these narratives are about. Tibbs,
Yep.
did you have some?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the whole propaganda war and the narrative war about it. I would just like to give a small shout out to Nikita for reminding me every time we lose a tower by going, "Oi, Nancy," in Discord. So, yeah.
The other thing too is towers are starting to run down to the end of their usefulness.
Right.
Well, they're all going to get reshuffled this winter, fall winter. So you have to stop and think, how much more do I want to fight over this or this when it's only going to be good for a few moons and then a few months, and then it's going to be reshuffled.
Right,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
whoever owns the moon. Oh wait, yeah, it's gonna be reshuffled. Huh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it may be a fair. Yeah, it's just a win in appearance.
I
maybe
guess
a
there
couple.
is a certain point right before the patch where the cost of installing a new tower will actually be less than the money you're gonna make off of the moon
Yep.
before the changeover. But I don't think we're there yet.
All right. Anything else you guys want to bring up about this conflict in the north that's happening? If not,
I just want to
let's-
respond to Pritzer in Twitch chat, because he said if you join Horde, you never see the PL main fleet. If you have been undocking from the Hakone station in the last couple of days and you've been killed by a bunch of claws, that's usually me of seeing claws in Hakone and just killing shit on your undock. And Horde's always in that fleet, and that is a PL main fleet, so that statement is not true.
I will say that I've seen Horde fleets and PL fleets in the same system recently.
Yeah. Well,
Just one small thing to
Yeah.
finish up. We've got the fight coming on in the next few hours or so. It could be a really interesting one because it's in a system where previously the last weekend when the Soyotos were reinforced, you ended up having this Mexican standoff where no group was willing to jump into the other because, PONC, why would we jump into the waiting fleet of a goon fleet on the other side of a gate when we are defending the structure on one side of it? And Imperium didn't
by
want
the
to,
way.
yeah, and
That
then
didn't
goons
always
didn't want to,
be the case.
and then goons didn't want to jump into us because we had all our supers and titans on the other side. So, understandable. That's what the Mexican standoff was. But this one might be interesting because the Sino jammer for that system is down, which might lead to some interesting maneuvering. So, going to see what's happening.
all right. Let's move on real quickly to in the next half hour, and we may go over if you guys are willing to stay. Some of you have to go, but there's a lot to cover because CCP also had some game news that came out. So let's go ahead and cover that. I wanted to start with a little bit on the Alliance tournament, but not much. You guys will know the results to those tournaments, and that kind of data is usually outdated by the time this podcast comes out. So let's skip all that. But Tiberius, I'll give you a chance since you wrote a bunch of notes.
Yeah, so we're down to the last 4 days. It's the last couple of weekends, and CCP have started their broadcasting for this one. They've got a bunch of commentators and things over in Iceland doing the presentations. So it's last 24 teams battling out for the final rounds. Interesting thing for this year, there's been a lot of really new challengers coming into the fray, really forging themselves forward, and they look like they might be threatening to get into the finals. Like Penn is out, Salt Farmers, and a few others as well are looking pretty good. There's been some major upsets as well, like Hydra, who are usually favourites to get into at least the top brackets, got knocked down to losers bracket on day one by Tempest Calcif, Caldari Faction Warfare team, which was brilliant. So they're fighting their way up through the losers bracket. Snuffed Out versus Hull Control. Again, that was a great match last week where Tyler Bourbon warped his flagship Balgorn right into the middle of the Hull Control fleet, and that died. So they're having to fight their way through the winners bracket without a flagship, and so it's going to be interesting to watch how they fare on that. A bit more on the meta. Things have changed. We're seeing a lot of very heavy DPS cruiser and battle cruiser setups, which means matches are being very fast and vicious, and they've been great to watch. Another great big upset is Initiative putting PL into the losers bracket, which seeing PL's dominance of the Alliance tournament seen for many years, that was a surprise to a lot of commentators. So well done to Initiative for that one. And Band Apart beating Volta again, similar thing. Volta very strong tournament pedigree, getting knocked down again by a small low sec alliance group, so it's really good to see how they're doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in the winners bracket. The first Rabisu to die in an AT in a tournament so far, and 333 billion ISK destroyed.
Ravisu being
so
a
it's going to be a really,
ship,
really good weekend
that you get only in tournaments and stuff. So
That's
when
right.
they die, it's a bigger deal. Thank you for covering it that way. That was brilliant. That's why you're the best, Tiberius. So the one thing I did want to talk about with the Alliance tournament is just to give some perspective. There's been 15 now, and the first one wasn't even called Alliance tournament. It was called Caldari Championships, and the first 3 were won by the same group, which were Band of Brothers, and that Band of Brothers created a dynasty because they were big in the game, powerful in the game. They were winning tournaments, and they were establishing themselves as really the dominant power in EVE Online very early on. And that was later transitioned to Pandemic Legion's dynasty, which lasted about 5 years. That's about 2008, for about 5 years. And then they were really challenged by Hydra Reloaded. They came in and had a short, couple back-to-back wins. Apparently they split up maybe into Camel Empire, which won. But right now, what you're seeing is not a dynasty anymore. It's very competitive. A lot of these guys are very seasoned. People take it very seriously, and some only do this. That's all they exist for, like Exodus, who NC Dot is actually fighting later on today. So it's very interesting. You're seeing a really competitive tournament. You're seeing really good coverage of it. By what Tiberius just said, you're seeing a lot of really specific interest. It really feels like a sport's coming together in this arena.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once a year. So,
yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Well, they've done a lot of great work on balancing it out a little bit and making it easier for the teams that don't have the resources and the time. It used to be to compete in the Alliance tournament, you used to have to spend an unbelievable amount of IS to get the absolutely best implants and all of that, and then you had to spend an unbelievable amount of time on the test server, which was not always set up to train like it is for now. And then it was just they've made a lot of changes. Having the specific test server just for training, where you don't have to worry about getting spied on all the time.
That was one of PL's secrets, right?
Releasing the rules a little later. Just the meta, I feel like, is pretty good. It's pretty balanced.
Yep.
They've been slowly making improvements, and you can see now the other teams are able to finally. It's easier to put a competitive tournament team together than it was in the past, which is why you see more people choosing to do it. And back during AT8, AT9, when PL was dominating, people aren't dumb. They would look at it and be like, well, PL's got the veteran team. They're going to put in 3 months of work on it, and so is Hydra. What can we really compete with that? Nully's team, when we combined Huns with Nidispar, who runs the NC Dot team right now, we did it way back in the day, and we still came in second. But we had to put an exorbitant amount of time and effort into that.
You guys upset PL, actually, right? Or did you beat Hydra?
We beat both of them.
You beat both of them, which was amazing. That was probably a little.
Well, not we. I wasn't on the team. They did, but our alliance, yeah.
Right. But and it's funny because all 3 of us, Killaby, Pro God, myself, are from Nully Segunda. I don't know. I just took that in. Memories. Some of my best days were in Nully Segunda, flying under Pro God Legend. Some of the funnest stuff I did in EVE was there. Anyway, that's when we were young.
Memories.
Let's move on to August release. There's some stuff coming up. Looks like there's this thing called Lucky Clash, and it's kind of funny. Does somebody want to describe it, or should I go on? Okay, nobody stepped up, so I'm left there standing. So Lucky Clash looks like it's an extension of the agency mechanic, which is built to basically get players out to do things. And it looks like there might be some loot boxes type stuff coming through, where you get a crate and there's just mystery items in there. So it's kind of a gambling aspect to the whole thing. and it's even kind of RP'd around a little bit of gambling, which is kind of funny since CCP outlawed player gambling, but now they can safely put it in, not gambling, but put in, trappings of gambling inside of the game, which has always been there. It's always been there, even since they talk about walking in stations and having a casino that you could walk to and sit there and, it's always been there. It was the perversion of the gambling money by players that really kind of screwed that whole thing up. Okay. UI standings changes. They're going to do some user interface changes to the standings.
Yep. I've been looking at it on the Singularity test server just now.
Tell us about that. What's that look like?
I'll try to describe it, but you can't see my computer screen, of course. But in the character sheet, the interaction section, the standings tab, they've really done an overhaul on this. So there's a left-hand panel that lists all of the NPC factions, corporations, and agents, and you can collapse those by header. So you can just collapse the factions and the corporations and just look at agents, or just look at corporations. For any NPC entity in question, you can left-click on it. So, for example, I was just running missions for Broodor Tribe, and across the top, you'll have a bar that indicates what your current standings are. And if it's negative, 0 in the middle, negative 10 on the left, positive 10 on the right, if it's negative, it'll be a red bar on the left half. And if it's positive, it'll be a blue bar on the right half. And it even has markers for the different thresholds. So if I go to one of the factions, Minmatar Republic, it very clearly indicates that -5, you will be attacked when entering space controlled by Minmatar Republic. -2, agents restricted, limited to level 1 agents belonging to Minmatar Republic, regardless of derived standings. And there are also markers for level 2 agents available, level 3, level 4, level 5 available. You will be invited to the Epic Arc, the Epic Mission Arc, so on and so forth. Additionally, the right-hand panel for any entity that you have selected shows you the transaction log right there. So I've just been running missions for Broodor Tribe, so I've got 4 entries for mission completed. So the date, the amount of the change, and the reason. So mission completed, gone berserk. Mission completed, eliminate the pirate campers, so on and so forth. I haven't had enough time to actually see what this looks like when doing a storyline mission yet, since that needs 16 regular missions. I haven't been on Singularity that long today. But the transaction log is right there, so you don't have to go to show info on the faction or the corporation, go to the standings tab, look for Broodor Tribe to Seamus Donahue, right-click, show transactions. It's not buried under all those levels of user interface anymore. Now it's all in the character sheet, interactions section, standings tab. I also like how the thresholds on the standings bar are clearly marked out, because that makes it a lot more clear, especially to new players, what the consequences of negative standings are.
I think a lot of old players need to learn it too as well sometimes.
Yeah, quite possibly. Oh, -2 faction standings. I can't work for the higher level agents anymore? That's what's going on all this time? So yeah, I like what CCP's done with this screen.
I kind of like some of the reinforcement elements of it, in the fact that, you know, positive increases are shown in one color, negative in another. You get a little graph there which shows you the improvement over time, because I mean, if you PvE a lot, you know, increasing your standings and things like that are very important to you. And sometimes it feels like a massively thankless task, and I think being able to like get a bit more reinforcement from that, it will psychologically help a lot of people.
Yeah, they've even got a couple of icons here, which when I mouse over them says, reprocessing tax reduction. Broodor Tribe will collect a lower reprocessing tax in their stations as their standing towards you goes up. Broker's fee reduction. Brewdor Tribe will collect a lower broker's fee of market sell orders in their stations as their standing towards you goes up. So it actually explains those mechanics right there on the screen. Granted, it's going to be in a tooltip, but now it's actually part of that user interface. You can also mouse over the actual standing number itself, just above those two little icons, and it says base standing 6.53. You have connections level 4. This gives you a bonus of 0.55. Standing 7.08. So it actually spells that out for you.
Good.
What else is changing?
I'd like to interrupt real quick and say Test just won their AT match, so
Mazel tov.
Well done, Test. They're in the losers bracket at the moment, so them winning is like massively important.
more
That's
like
really
the
good.
winners bracket now. We just keep winning.
Nice. I like it. So we just had the agency an event for that finish. That finished earlier this week. It looks like there's another event coming along under the name of Lucky Clash. Everybody was kind of wondering whether this was AT tournament related. It seems to have some sort of thematic RP elements to it, where it is that sites are spawning for the Interstellar Gaming Commission, and you know it seems like a very stereotypical go to site, shoot the things, grab the loot, get out, and if you're so way inclined, steal somebody else's loot and shoot them when they try and shoot you back. So that's coming up. A few more details will be. There's not too many details, but you can test it on the server at the moment. But it looks like there's strong box rewards for doing it as well. So that's looking interesting. I'll be checking that out when that is all done. I think one of the biggest changes in this upcoming patch as well is that not only are industry-based star-based modules losing their bonuses. So if you have an old POS stick and you've got your modules on it, you're going to lose all your nice bonuses on it doing industry in them because they're all being moved over entirely into Citadels now. You'll still be able to anchor them and use them, you just won't get the bonuses. And more importantly, I think a big shakeup for the meta when it comes to assaulting structures is some of structural weaponry is getting a rebalance, including the dreaded void bombs. Now, anybody got any thoughts on that change? Why CCP changing that one?
Well, I wanted to get the Carnarius, you can go next. I wanted to get Pro Gods and Killer Bees in just a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit last week. That's why I'm interested to hear what Pro God and Killer Bee think of these upcoming changes, because that's just Tuesday the 15th.
Yeah, these are coming up fast.
Mm-hmm. So they basically decreased the range from 40 to 20 km, but they've increased the nude amount per second, and they've also increased the flight time. Now, he actually added it to the thing in the brackets. I know on the original post it wasn't there. So now it nudes 6,000 gigajoules every 40 seconds instead of 4,000 gigajoules every 20 seconds. So the individual bomb nudes more, but it has a lower range. So you can actually just anchor at 25 technically, and only part of your fleet will get it.
And
whereas before, go ahead.
That and the 40-second rate of fire matters. If you're in a subcap and you're gonna get nuded out entirely, the fact 4,000 newt versus 6,000 newt doesn't really matter if you're gonna be at 0, right? Regardless. So the fact that it's 40 seconds now, you cap boost back up, and you've got 39 more seconds of cap free shooting and whatever. Then you get nuded again, but instead of every 20 seconds being every 40 seconds, makes it a lot more manageable as long as there's no fucking module lag. Which one of the main problems with these Citadel void bombs is that most of these Citadel fights happen in 10% tie-dye because they're everyone knows a big Citadel fight on a fortizar well in advance.
Yeah, very contested. But do you think this solves the problems that people had with the fortizar fights, the structure fights?
It's I don't know. It's hard to say. Like the void bomb's still going to be a bitch to deal with, but it's manageable now. I mean, back when it had a 40-kilometer radius, you couldn't use any subcap fleet that required cap. You just couldn't. Now you could technically. Like if you plan it out and you have a good doctrine and you know what you're doing, you can use a laser doctrine or some other cap gun doctrine on a fortizar. You just have to, as Killaby said, orbit at 25. You got to teach people how to be, patient with their cap booster charges and all that. And it's doable.
It's still going to have
to
a
clarify.
massive effect. Still massive effect on what doctrine you can bring. And
I'm going to bring nightmare doctrines on citizens. So, like, if I can use nightmares, and you can use other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the void bomb was forcing people down the route, and just to clarify it, of using weaponry that didn't use ammunition, which not energy to fire, which was essentially projectile weaponry, mimitar weaponry, and anything that could tank well passively, as in it didn't need energy to keep its tank modules running. So that eliminated anything laser based or anything active tank based effectively.
By energy, you mean capacitor.
Yep.
That's what we call it. Okay. All right. Well, I just kind of wanted to, see, because I know that ProGuide was CSM before, and Killer Bee's constantly looking at mechanic changes and stuff to get their points of view on that, and as well as Carneros. So thank you, guys. Do you want to continue with whatever updates are coming, Tiberius?
Yep. End of an era. Captain's quarters is being removed. I'm sure that will split many people. Yeah, like some people will be very upset and sad about it as the dream of Incarna finally disappears, and I think a lot of people will be sitting there thinking it's about goddamn time. Then, yeah,
Some
exactly.
people will be both.
Yeah. Like I don't know if you guys ever saw there was a visualization that CCP put out a few months back. I think it was probably like a year ago now, where they did one of their high level design overviews of how the game is put together, and so every single element of the game was represented by a node on a spider map, and as they added bits to it, and you started off with the game, and in the early days of sort of 2004, 2005, all this sort of thing, when they're developing it, and they're adding like the core of the game and adding in other bits to it, and then adding in further bits, and then you got to Incarna, and this massive spider web of development information just shot off the side and was like twice the size of anything else that they developed beforehand. And that finally is now, apart from the character creation screen, which I understand is going to simplify that massively, is going to be disappearing, which will take a lot of load off CCP when it comes to development and keeping that up to date and keeping that running. Anybody sad that it's going finally?
Well, we're not going to change the name of the show. It was about walking in stations, and so Talking in Stations was a play on that. And actually, I didn't name the show. It was named by then editor Ryan from INN, who came up with that brilliant idea. But that's no big deal. So it is sad to see. It is sad to see a direction that we all, when we first came to EVE, there was this, it's a great game, it's a great spaceship game, and you're going to be able to walk around soon. That was one of the promises that we kept building for like 2 or 3 years, and a lot of people were behind it. So there's definitely some bittersweetness about it. We know it's not going to work the way it was intended to work, but it is kind of sad to see that go.
Just rename the podcast Station Talking as a play on station spitting.
But I mean, it was. That's completely derailed my train of thought now.
Yeah,
but it's
go.
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. Certainly, a couple of years ago, it was part of the big dream, the big sort of expansion to go with EVE. Where you could do all these things, and now it's. Fun fact, one of the largest threads on the forum still to this day is the "When is Incarna coming back?" thread. It has hundreds of pages and thousands of responses on it going, "Oh, please bring it back, please bring it back." And now I guess the answers to all the questions in that thread have now finally been answered.
Well, just keep in mind there are people who play the game for different reasons than big fights and stuff like that, and all sorts of different reasons. And there are people that we never hear from, so we think, but they do, and there's a lot of them. And it's not just Incarna watchers, but also other people who do stuff like really just farm and fields kind of stuff, or small time corporation stuff, whatever. Different people play this game differently. It's not all about what we see and what we talk about on the show. That said, go ahead.
Make sure you get your avatar in your captain's quarters screenshots before Tuesday.
Oh, good point. All right, scanning improvements. This is a big deal.
This is a big quality of life change for scanners, in the fact that one, when you bookmark a signature now, it will automatically pre-fill the signature ID in the bookmark for you, which is fantastic. So all your court mates, when they fly through the same system, will see the ID and know exactly what that is if you've bookmarked it. And the second one, it will save the anoms on the scan history until you log off. So you fly through the same system, you will see what you scanned down before until you disappear and log off. That's such a huge quality of life change, because the number of times, particularly for people like wormholers who go and scan out multiple chains of wormholes, because you'll scan out one wormhole, you'll scan everything in that wormhole, jump to the next wormhole, jump through it, see where that goes, then come back, and then everything's reset. And then now that won't happen, because you'll jump out, jump back in, you'll still see everything, you'll know where it leads to, and you can make a decent note. It's going to save so much time for people that do that sort of work. So it's a really, really nice life change for them. And there are far too many updates to the beta map than we can possibly go through on this, but there's a lot of interesting ones around ship capital ranges and things like that as well.
It looks like that change also applies to cosmic signatures, not just the cosmic anomalies. Is that right?
Any anomaly you need to scan, it will save what it is. It will save the type, and it will save it under the ID, the same ID. So you jump out, you come back. Anything that you need to scan down, it will save and remember for you.
All right, what are these updates to the beta map?
Lots of them. Lots and literally a whole page of them. But it's funny. The interesting thing about the beta map is it's hasn't got a lot of love recently, and it seems now that finally they seem to be putting in a lot of tweaks and things just to make it a bit more readable and a bit more usable. It will show accurate ranges for ships with jump drivers and things like that, so that's going to be pretty good.
All right, cool. Well, I look forward to those kinds of things that you use all the time. Well, that I do anyway. Okay, so a little bit of stuff outside of Eve that I think is pretty interesting that kind of affects Eve is CSM Summit is coming up, and it looks like they've released a list of who is going to be there. Unfortunately, looks like NC.'s Vince Draken isn't going to be able to make it, but they did put a list out of people who were going to make it. And we'll see how that goes. That's always interesting. They release a lot of information after that, so you can see the direction of the game. It's very important. Also want to say a couple more things about History of Empires is now in audiobook form, read by the author, Andrew Groen. Terrific book, terrific author, and he's a great presenter as well. And you probably have seen him. If you haven't heard of him, you should look him up. And that is History of Eve Empires, now available on Amazon as an audiobook to accompany your hardcover or softcover, should you have those. Highly recommend. Last thing about Eve is Campfire Challenge is put together by John Dries, who's a video maker, has worked for INN, also works for EN24. He's sponsoring this with EN24, and they're looking for stories in the video format. So check that out on Eve News 24. Campfire Challenge with John Dries, a great video maker. Last thing is Discord is getting video conferencing, so that might change things up for us, huh?
Yay!
Anybody messed with it?
Are you one of the lucky 5% who got it?
No, I'm not. I'm the 99%.
He's not. I am. I don't know why they gave it to me. I literally have 3 Discord servers, and that's it.
They gave it to me, and I have no webcam. It's just triggering me even more.
Wait, what do you mean? They just give it to random people, or?
Yeah, 5%.
Yeah.
No, I mean I don't know what the parameters were, but basically the message said, "Hey, we gave this beta version of the video chat to 5% of our users, and you're one of the lucky few. There you go. Have fun."
They're rolling it out a little bit slowly,
didn't
but
get it.
everyone will get it in a month.
It could be that they're starting out in European place. So,
Well, that could actually be, yeah.
Instead of
I should ask some other Euros. I should ask Headliner.
right. I think instead of taking on the entire population of the US, where streaming is really big and the population is really big, they probably rolled it out in a more controlled way. They said 5%, but yeah, at the end of the month, Carneros.
Yeah, they're giving themselves 30 days to roll it out.
You've seen it before, right?
No, I just had a meeting with Discord this week at work, but and they're also doing screen sharing as part of this same cycle here right now, along with the video chat.
Well, this could be really cool for us and the audience because it would allow us to get away from using Skype and all the weird formatting stuff we have to do. So it might actually look a little sharper, but also being able to screen share, I think would be good because then in this case, Seamus could say like, this is what I'm talking about. Let me actually scroll through this and show you. Let me show you my game or that sort of thing.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. Could be. We've been thinking of ways to do it before. When we have market guys like Aerith or Kenneth on, I would like for them to be able to go through the market and tell us and show us, pointing at the things that they're talking about. I think it would make a lot more sense. Also, shows like financial shows like, well, anyway, the point is a lot of, possibilities with that kind of technology coming on.
Mhm.
All right. Well, look at that. We nailed it. We're even a little bit early, but I did want to go ahead and start wrapping up the show. But first, I want to see if there's anything that you guys wanted to talk about and something that we didn't cover or something you want to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, only thing I want to cover other than this is just this week's upcoming get-togethers. There is still Eve's. Get words out right. Steel City Eve 2, which is in Butler, PA. I understand Rick Javix is organising that one. We've also got the 4th annual Midwest meetup in Iowa, Urbandale, I believe that is the town that it's in. And the guys from Clueless Space Nerds are organising that one. A hilarious bunch of fellas. Then there's the now new monthly Vegas meetup. So if you don't get enough Vegas Eve once a year, you now get to go and do Eve at Vegas every month. Of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. Go check that one out. Then we got the Houston monthly meet as well coming up. They hold a regular event, and that's at the King's Head pub in Houston. And then we've got the Boat Builders Yard, Melbourne, Australia. So they're all between the 19th. First Steel City's on the 19th. The rest are on the 25th or 26th, with Melbourne, Australia on the 2nd of September. So if you are in those sort of areas, go check them out. Go to evemeet.net, go and have a look. They'll give you the addresses and locations.
We also have the Thursday, the 17th, we've got the San Diego meetup at our usual Kaminsky's barbecue.
Oh, the 17th. I'm going to try to make that.
Hey,
How many?
come down.
Pro God, are you going to make Eve Vegas again?
Yeah, that's the plan at this point.
Awesome. I'm trying to find a way to.
Killa, you gonna make the train this time?
I don't know yet. We'll see with the money, but I have a
Oh.
job now, so maybe I can save up enough money to make it. We'll see.
So it's a possibility?
Yeah, but a very slim one.
Oh.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's so much money to get there from Germany. I just it's like 800-900 for the flight back and forth, and then plus living there for a week, plus the thing I have to fill out to even get into the US. It's like a €50 sheet of paper and all that kind of shit. It's
Good.
pretty ridiculous.
Keep them out, man.
Yeah.
Keep those walls up.
ESA or whatever it's called, I think, right? ESA, something. I don't know. It's like some sheet that I have to fill out and stuff. But yeah, we'll see. Like, I'll check out my bank account like in a month or two, and then I'll know if I have enough money.
Whatever it is, very unwelcoming, and that's too bad. But hopefully we see you there. We'll see Pro God there. Carneros will be there. Unfortunately, Tibbs will have to fundraise. You almost made it this year. You just,
Almost made it this year, but The wife thought that a holiday to Sorrento was far more important than my going out on a nerd meet in Vegas. So unfortunately, I had to bow to her demands after going to Iceland. Sadly, not making it this year. Which would have been great because I'd love to have gotten my hands on that Marshall.
So,
that they're giving away.
update. It's October 6th to 8th this year?
Can't answer that. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it just looks. I'm actually not going to make it. I have a wedding to go to.
No.
Yeah, October 6th to 8th.
Tell them to get married in Vegas.
That's a
Funny
remedy.
enough, Eve Vegas is at the Link Hotel that suffered a massive flood a few days ago as well. The entirety of their underground car park was filled up with water to the top of the cars that were parked down there. So that was interesting.
How did that happen?
Oh, I can't even
I don't
imagine
know.
that.
I remember seeing some pictures of it.
Wait, isn't Vegas in the middle of the desert? How does water get there?
Monsoon rains.
Your guess is as good as mine. So you know.
That's not expected in that part of the world. Okay. All right, thanks. So I just want to say hello to my friend from France and NASA. I hope you're well. We talked recently. It's good to talk to him. And I want to thank ProGod and thank Killabee for joining us today. And it's good to be back. Carneros, thank you for hosting us yesterday week's show.
My pleasure.
And thanks to Dirk as well, who's actually on vacation himself, should be arriving today. So we'll see him back soon. Tiberius and Seamus, thank you guys. And of course, thanks McLeod for putting the show together. And thank you guys for watching. We do want to have, sorry, go ahead, Carneros.
No, it's Killa. You got anything to say? Shout outs?
No, it was just a very loud enter button.
All right. I wanted to say thank you very much to Rathkatan for a 40-bit cheer and Dot Faultier for $5. I should have Seamus read stuff because he reads much better than I do. Faultier for $5. And then we got a bunch of follows. I can't list them all, but thank you very much, guys, for showing your support for the show. It helps, as you can imagine. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Very entertaining. Coming back from a week of vacation to a war. It feels pretty good to see so much activity. Last thing I'll say is that I did actually move the character Matterall into a Titan, so you may actually see him on the board in one of these fights. But we'll see how that goes. So thanks very much, guys, for watching. That's all we have this week. We'll see you next week on Talking In Station.